You're listening to the Author Stories Podcast, bringing you the story behind the stories and the storytellers.
Margaret White,
Terry Brooks,
Sheena Kamal,
Matthew Quick,
JT Ellison,
Walt D. Williams,
Brad Thor,
Corey Doctorow,
Brandon Sanders,
Robin Mock,
Ernest Klein, Jim Butcher,
Charlene Harris.
Visit hankgarner.com for archives of all the shows. Today's guest is...
Thanks for joining me again for the Author Stories Podcast, where I bring you the story behind the stories and the storytellers. Today, I'm really excited to have Wanda M Morris on the show with me. She has an amazing debut novel. This is one of the most exciting debut novels that I've seen in quite a while. I love this book. I know you're going to love it. If you're a fan of thrillers and twisty stories like I am, this is a must-have for your to-be-read pile. And you know what? We're entering into the holiday season now. When you're hearing this, it's the 1st of November. And, you know, all our big gift-giving holidays are next month. And All Her Little Secrets, the brand new book by Wanda M Morris, is a perfect stocking stuffer or, a gift that you want to give someone that you love. Welcome to the show, Wanda.
Thank you. Thank you, Hank, for having me.
I'm excited to have you. Wanda, we begin each show with the very same question, and that question is, what is your first memory of wanting to be a writer or storyteller?
Oh, gosh. Okay, so if I go in the Wayback Machine, I think it would probably be when I was maybe entering high school. And interestingly enough, I wrote a short story for a class I was in. I believe it was 10th grade. And the teacher called me up to her office. She said she wanted to talk to me about my story. And I thought, oh my gosh, like, did she hate it or did she love it? And she told me, where did you, get the idea for this? And she started asking me a bunch of questions about it. And I was, kind of like, finally, I was like, is something wrong? And she says, well, I just thought it was so good that I didn't know whether you wrote it. And I was like, what's that supposed to mean? Like, give me my A and let's move on.
Right.
But I never really thought like, yeah, I'll be a writer. I knew I loved to write. And so I kept at it in little ways, but I don't think it came until much later that I actually kind of wrapped my brain around the thought that, yes, I could do this. I could write a book.
What do you remember about that story that raised eyebrows?
Well, I think for her, and I won't name her because I think she's still alive. But I think for her, she said that, well, the characters just seem so vibrant and they seem so real. And I was like, I thought that was the assignment. We were supposed to bring the characters alive, but
right.
So, I now looking back on it, I have all kinds of, adult, very jaded thoughts about why she asked me those questions and why she believed what she believed. But,
sure,
what I take away from it is the positive, which is I wrote a story that was engaging and she liked it so much that, she doubted the veracity of my writing it. But nonetheless, I take away from that she obviously found the story very good. So.
Yeah. I've talked to a number of writers who had a similar experience to that, that they wrote something and a teacher just couldn't believe that, a young person, could have come up with this. And it's just we have people that study for years and get master's degrees and and all of this sort of thing that only then learn to um, convey a story this way or create characters that are nuanced and all of this. And sometimes you just have the gift of storytelling, and it's something intangible that we can't necessarily put our fingers on, but it's very real, and it happens with people. Do you come from a family of storytellers, or was there anything or any people in your life or situations that kind of kindled that in you, or do you just have the storytelling gene?
Um, that's a really good question. I mean, I come from a long line of, BSers in my family. Those people who sit around and tell
Oh yeah.
a whale kind of story. You're like, Uncle so and so, that didn't really happen. So I think the answer to your question is yes, that I have, these uncles and aunts, and, both my parents could tell a story. And, oh gosh, my brothers, oh gosh, they were like the king of, big, tall lies. But, I think that was a different sort of storytelling. But yeah, I come from a family that's very, very much engaged and likes to talk and, likes to share stories and things like that. And I even have siblings who dabble in writing and things like that. So yeah, I guess the answer probably is yeah.
So Wanda, you as someone who could write a story and had at least some aspiration to to follow this into a professional pursuit at some point, you did the most natural thing that anyone could do, and you went into law. What got you interested in pursuing the law first off?
I think it was actually because I did like to write, and so I kind of held it secret because I'm the youngest of 7 kids, and so money was always a little tight. So I was
Sure.
encouraged to, pursue a quote unquote real job. And, I love writers, but I think that there's still that misconception, at least it was amongst, my family, my parents, that that's not a job where you can make a living, support a family, do all these things. And so I was really encouraged to find a real job, as it was said. And so that's why I wound up as a lawyer, because at least I still got an opportunity to write. I mean, lawyers do a lot of reading, they do a lot of writing. It's a very different type of writing, but nonetheless, I still felt like I got the opportunity to tell a story, because when you are, you know, writing, a brief or trying to persuade a jury or something, you really are kind of telling a story.
Yeah.
Within the confines of the legal rules, but nonetheless you're telling a story. So yeah, I never lost my love for words and writing. I think I just decided, I do a different thing first, and I guess in the back of my mind, maybe I always knew I was going to come back to this, because I had so many fits and starts with it. I kind of started, do something. Maybe I was a little afraid. I'd do something else. Maybe, so it was kind of drips and drabs. So I think I always knew I was going to be here, not specifically with this book per se, but I always knew somehow I was going to write. It was always going to stay in my life.
Wanda, you live in Atlanta now, is that right?
Correct.
Are you from Atlanta?
I am not. I'm actually from Cleveland, Ohio.
Okay.
I've lived here in Atlanta, gosh, for over 20 years.
Okay. All right. So you're a transplanted Atlanta native.
I am. I moved down here after law school for my very first job, and I met my husband 2 weeks later. And, and then, we dated, we got married, and we, moved to some other places. We moved around, but then we came back here because he's from here. He's originally from Atlanta.
Gotcha.
And so I have, lots of in-laws and extended family here. So this is home.
Well, for the listeners' benefit, we are recording this the middle of the week previous to when you're hearing this, and Atlanta began their World Series run last night, the Braves, and for all of us that live in the Southeast, the Atlanta Braves are our local hometown team, and so go Braves.
Go Braves, and they won the first game.
Yes, they did. Yes, they did. In dramatic fashion. It was a fantastic game. So I ask you about Atlanta because I'm intrigued by how a sense of place has a way of seeping into our writing, and sometimes it's very evident because we'll write books that are set in the place where we're from, but sometimes that a sense of place works in different unique ways. Do you feel like that Atlanta seeps into your writing, or maybe Ohio, and where you spent some of your formative years? Does a sense of place affect the kinds of stories or the kinds of characters that you create?
It's a good question. I think for All Her Little Secrets, it absolutely did. A lot of the things that went into the book were intentional because of the place, the setting, the fact that Atlanta, was at one time the capital, so to speak, of the Confederate military operations, but it's also the cradle of the civil rights movement. And, the fact that there are Confederate soldiers carved into the side of Stone Mountain. And we also have streets named John Lewis Parkway. I mean, it's a city of dichotomies.
Right.
And this book, I think, taps into a lot of that, of course. But I thought it was also the perfect place to explore what happens when those kinds of dichotomies collide. So yeah, for me, it was very important. It was intentional that the story take place here in Atlanta. But of course, Elise Littlejohn, that's the name of the protagonist in All Her Little Secrets. Elise Littlejohn's story, you could find that story anywhere in this country.
Sure.
Women who are, underestimated but undeterred. You'll find that story in any city in this country.
100%. Dabble is a proud sponsor of Author Stories. Dabble is an easy-to-use cloud-based writing tool that gives writers a way to organize, plot, and create amazing stories wherever they are. Write in our desktop app on your Mac or Windows computer, tablet, or mobile device. Dabble syncs your latest version with the cloud on all your devices. Write anywhere and anytime inspiration strikes. We got you. Dabble is my preferred writing tool, and I think it will be yours as well. Visit dabblewriter.com for your free trial. You have an amazing story idea. You execute the writing and editing flawlessly, and now the only thing missing are readers. We can help you go from author to author superhero with Story Origin. Story Origin is a one-stop shop for marketing tools with a community of amazing authors working together to find reviewers, build mailing lists, increase sales, and collect feedback from beta readers. Everything an author needs, all in one place, from providing review copies or beta copies
reader magnets to ensure you stay connected with readers, easily distribute audio promo codes, universal retail links to send readers directly to the proper point of purchase, or provide direct download links for members of your mailing list. Story Origin has all the tools you need in one easy-to-use site. Use the promo code ASP21 at checkout when subscribing to the yearly plan, and you will get 10% off your first year. This code will expire December 31st, so hurry over and subscribe now. StoryOriginApp.com.
So, Wanda, where does your love of twisty thrillers come from? This is, and I meant what I said earlier. This is one of my favorite books of the year, and because it is so unpredictable, and Elise takes us to places that I was surprised to go, surprised in a good way, and the story just, the breakneck twists and turns all throughout, which is just a masterpiece of storytelling. Where does your love of those types of stories come from?
Oh, first of all, thank you very much for those kind words. Gosh, it sounds kind of funny, but as a child, I always had my nose in a book. And so, like most kids and most parents, they kind of like turn that light off and go to sleep. And so, I was always hearing this, turn those lights off, get to bed. And I wanted to finish a chapter or, finish some section of a book that I was reading. And so I was always trying to race through the story, which doesn't lend itself very well for like the classics, but it's another story for another time. And so I always liked books that were, I guess, what you call a fast read. So, books that kind of, hit the ground running and drag me through the story, because maybe intrinsically I kind of felt like, somebody was going to come behind me and say, turn those lights off and go to bed. But I think I just always gravitated to the genre just because I think it's so fascinating. I've always loved mysteries and thrillers, and gosh, I really couldn't tell you a specific reason, but I think maybe it's from that experience of, always wanting to just keep reading, but knowing that, okay, just one more chapter. So I tried to write a book that, people would read, go, okay, just one more chapter.
Well, you definitely did that.
Thank you.
Wanda, all her little secrets, and we'll get into more particulars about the story in just a minute, but you touch on some very timely topics, some topics that we as a culture and society are talking about more and more, and things are coming to the forefront. But you talk about them in such a way that they are totally believable, and I dare say that you will. It's stories like this that will get more people talking about some of the issues. And I'm being a little vague because I don't want to give away too much of the story. I'll let you kind of tackle some of that in a minute. But you do it in such a way that I think you have the ability to bring people into the conversation that wouldn't normally be in the conversation, because maybe people are uncomfortable talking about certain things, or feel that they don't have certain standing in it, so they just would rather just stay out of it because they don't want to be on the wrong side of a conversation, because they don't know how to handle it. But what you've done is you have given us very believable characters that wind up in very believable situations. We can totally see how some of these things unfold, and you walk us through that through characters that we begin to love and that we really connect with. My question is, were you thinking about some of these bigger societal issues, some of these bigger questions and things that we really need to wrestle with. Were you thinking about those types of things from the beginning and then found a way to deliver that through story, or were you just thinking of a great story and you just happened to, these incidents just happened to really work with the story?
I think what my intention was when writing this book, I wanted to explore what one Black woman goes through when she lives in this America and when she works in corporate America. And, you know, for lack of better phrasing, it's hard to be Black and female in this country. And so I set out to explore kind of what is that experience like? What is it like to have all the educational pedigree and, surround yourself in the cloak of success, but you're still Black and you're still female and you still, have to navigate these predominantly white spaces where you're the only one or one of a few, or you are trying to just go out and have brunch and do a little shopping with your girlfriend. What is that experience like? And so I tapped into some real lived experiences, of course. I tapped into those experiences that, my friends, other women I've talked to have had, that, it's the small things. Somebody butchers your name instead of just asking, how do I pronounce your name if you have an unusual spelling, or that someone would gaslight you and dare to tell you something that your own eyes and ears tell you is not true.
Right.
So that's a lot to handle. And so one of the things that I know early readers have commented on is like, oh my gosh, you have this opening scene where she does what seems like the unthinkable. But when you go down a few layers, you find that this young woman has been living the unthinkable, that, what is in her backstory is just, really terrible. And the fact that she still overcomes what are near insurmountable odds to do all these things that everyone tells her she should be. You should be smart, you should be professional, you should be, well dressed, and you should be eloquent. And she does all those things, and she's still treated not much better than what she was in her backstory. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, it does. One of the things that I love so much about Elise Littlejohn is that you could have easily made a character who was this perfect Mary Sue, who had no past and was just. We all know kids that just seem like they just live a charmed life, and they and Elise may have that image on the outside, but she does have a past. She does have things that she's wrestling with and running from in a certain sense. And then when faced with a tragedy that's right in front of her, she behaves in a way that is not how we think that she should have behaved. You made her a very real character, is what I'm saying. Where did the character of Elise come from?
Gosh. Elise is like an amalgam of women that I've known and women that I've met. And one of the things that I tried to do in this book is show kind of different slices of, female life. And if you step back from the book and look, nearly every woman in the book is kind of on her own journey, whether it is Elise or it's her friend Grace, or even Willow, who is her white female colleague in the executive suite, excuse me. She too is kind of on a journey to navigate this space that is kind of a good old boy space. And so I wanted to show, kind of what does that journey look like for these different women. One reviewer was very gracious and said that the book reminded them of, John Grisham's firm, and this was such a great legal thriller. And I was like,
Yes.
very, very grateful for that comment. I just hope people understand that I didn't set out to write legal thrillers. I really want to write, women's stories, not necessarily legal stories, although this story takes place within the context of a legal story. But it really is about uplifting and shining a light on the stories of women in this world. That's what I really set out to do.
So, Wanda, after pursuing an education in law and then practicing law, and you've done a number of things, what was it that brought you back around to writing? We know that you had this early love of writing and love of stories and books, but what told you that it was time to see if you had that novel in you?
Yeah, I wrote the first draft of this book in 2008, and then I put it aside. I actually put it away and didn't work on it for probably 7 years.
Wow.
Because I convinced myself that no one was going to want to read a story about a Black woman in her 40s who dealt with, all sorts of abominable people. And
have you seen the news lately?
Right? We all are, right?
Right.
And then about 6 years ago, I had a health scare. And I got through it, but, a lot of people, I know it seems kind of cliche, but, that health challenge was an epiphany for me, because I started to ask myself, gosh, what is it that I'm doing for me? I'm doing everything. I work in this very stressful job. I have kids, I have a family, I'm doing everything for everybody, but what gives me joy? And, I tapped back into that girl with her nose in a book growing up on the east side of Cleveland. And I pulled that manuscript back out, and it was bad. Oh gosh, Hank, it was bad. It was really bad.
There's
But
nothing like several years perspective on a story, reading back over
right?
it. That's, yeah, I know
You gotta
exactly
say,
what you're talking
ooh,
about.
wee. And but that was okay, because I decided I was committed to it, and I could make bad better.
Yeah.
So I started working on it again, and then had another, 5 years or so of rejection before we got to this point. But I really decided that, this is what because let me step back for a minute. I remember, and this was years and years and years ago, I read this book, and I'm not going to name the author or the name of the book, but I believe I was pregnant with my first child, and I read this book, and it was just God awful. And I remember saying to myself, and I can see the book, I could see myself. I remember closing that book and going, I could write a book better than this.
Right.
And, but then I convinced myself that, oh, everybody says that. Everybody says, oh, I could write a book. And you know what? Probably everybody could if they committed themselves to
Yeah.
it, because
But a
it's not
few,
easy.
everybody says that, but a few actually do it.
Yeah, it's tough. It's
It is.
tough. Writing a book is hard, hard work. And I find that, the scenes and the things in the book that really resonate with people, they always say, oh, this particular scene, oh my gosh. And I think to myself, oh God, I struggled so much with that scene. So like the scenes that people really love are the scenes that were the hardest. I mean, it's hard, hard work.
But that also means that those are scenes that the most love and care went into, because when it is hard, you dig in and you work it out.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Yeah. That I love what you've done with the book. So when you come back to it and you start looking at it, you had this epiphany that I can take something that's not perfect and I can work on it, which is a completely different place than staring at the blank page, wondering if there is a story. The old saying, you can edit a bad story. It's hard to edit a blank page. There, you need something to start with. How did you start approaching the editing process? Did you, map it out, kind of see what you had, and then look at ways to start tweaking here and there? What was your editorial process like?
The first thing I remember about looking at that years old draft was that the characters didn't seem they seemed flat. And I think the reason why they seemed flat is because I was writing what I thought people would want characters to say, if
Mm,
that makes any sense,
sure.
instead of writing characters that would say things that you or I would say.
Right.
And so I remember one of the first things I did when I committed to doing this is I signed up for a workshop. And it's funny because in that workshop, the instructor, he was kind of giving out these, do's and don'ts, which is why I never tell people how they should write their book. You write the book that you want to write, because
Sure.
one of the first things he said is, don't ever write your books with dual timelines, because, some people love one timeline, other people love the other, but nobody's going to love both of them. And I was like, oh, okay. And I held on to that piece of advice for a very, very long time. And thank God I decided to drop it,
Yeah,
because
that's
it's
terrible
covered in
advice.
dual timelines.
That's terrible advice.
But yeah, I set about, you know, doing workshops and taking night classes, and I'm doing all this while I am working full time, and I have I started out with two kids. In the time it's taken me to write this book, I've had a baby. Okay. So, I had kids, but wherever I could snatch time, and I started with the characters first. And after the characters, when I kind of got my groove with who Elise was and who some of the other major characters were in the book, then I went to pacing, because I knew that, kind of that was what I liked. And it took me a while to get the pacing just right, because the book was originally told in just one linear fashion. Like I said, I didn't put the dual timelines in until later. So I was working in a linear fashion, and it just was not coming together for me. But eventually it all did. It is all a process that evolves, because once I started to learn about characterization, that helped me with pacing, and then once I got the groove of pacing, that kind of helped me with setting, for example. It was like gosh, where are these people? And, what does this setting mean to them? Why are they standing in this room having this conversation, and what's going on around them? And so things like that. So yeah, it's a process. Writing a book is hard, and it's a process. It evolves.
It is, but you figured it out. You cracked the code, because All Her Little Secrets is a fantastic thriller, and I love it how you mentioned earlier that it kind of does straddle between legal thriller on one side and more of a psychological thriller or a domestic thriller or whatever the nuance categories that we're coming up with, these days. But it really does straddle those two worlds very nicely, and I think the broad appeal of this book is one of the great things about it. It really does appeal to a wide audience. Wanda, after finishing this book and getting it out to the world, and when people are hearing this, the book is available, to go grab at your local bookstore or through the Amazon links that we'll have in the show notes. But what are you working on now, or have you dreamed up a follow-up for this book?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, when I am done here with the podcast, I better get my butt back in chair and get to working, because I owe William Morrow a second book in a couple months. But yeah, I am working on kind of the final revisions of my second book, which is a thriller as well. But it takes place in a historical setting this time. So it's 1964, Jackson, Mississippi, and the Jim Crow South, and two Black sisters become embroiled in the murder of a white man, and they take off running, and one heads north and the other winds up in a small town in Georgia. But what the sisters don't realize is there's someone who is hot on their trail, and he's got some secrets of his own too. And unfortunately, it comes to a deadly showdown. So,
I cannot wait. I can't wait to see what you do with that, Wanda. All Her Little Secrets is available everywhere now. There's links to it in the show notes, like I mentioned. Also, go visit your local bookstores, and local bookstores have had a rough time the last year and a half or so. Go support your local bookstores. Wanda, if people are just discovering you and want to dig into all the great stuff that you're up to, where can they connect with you online?
Sure. I am at Wanda Morris Writes, WRITES, Wanda Morris Writes at writes.com. Again, WandaMorrisWrites.com. And of course, you can find me on all the social media. I'm on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, probably way too much these days. But I'm so excited about the book. So yeah, so check me out.
Well, we will link up all those places in the show notes of this episode to make it easy for folks to find you. Wanda, this has been so much fun chatting. Thank you so much for taking time to come on the show. We are going to send everyone to pick up their copy of All Her Little Secrets.
Thank you so much for having me, Hank.
Now stay tuned for an audiobook excerpt from Richard Gleaves' The Jason Crane series.
You took a terrible risk tonight.
Why?
You don't know? The first rule.
I was told by a friend that I shouldn't reveal my gift to anyone who doesn't have a gift themselves.
That's exactly right.
Because everyone we tell dies.
Yes, you might have marked me for death.
Made you a target for a ghost. Why can't people know what we can do? What makes it so dangerous? Valerie took up the fireplace prongs and stabbed the logs.
It's called the Great Curse.
Sparks exploded from glowing crevices and drizzled upwards, ricocheting off the black belly of the cauldron, turning into tiny ashes that disappeared up the chimney.
It was cast by a powerful witch, over 300 years ago.
Witch? Sorry, but witch? Please, there's no such thing. Valerie closed her eyes. A spoon leapt from Jason's dish and caught him in the temple. He wiped melted ice cream from his cheek. You were saying?
She cast the curse to stop the witch trials.
In Salem? Jason searched his memory.
1692. They burned her alive in the Salem Common, the only witch to be burned.
The cauldron smoked slightly. Its contents had evaporated. A sharp, charred scent filled the room. Wait, said Jason. There were no witches. They were just, victims of religious hysteria, right? So you're saying the witch trials were justified?
Justified? So if a witch did exist, it would be okay to kill her?
No, I just thought... You're right. Never mind.
There was one witch in Salem, at least. A woman with a powerful gift. She only wanted to protect people like us, to give the gifted their anonymity, refuge. She cast the great curse as she burned. She proclaimed that mortals who know a witch shall know death. And that is the great curse. And it's still in effect after all this time.
Mortal, as in...
Non-gifted. No mortal can know about you, about any authentic witch.
Jason winced. Isn't there another word besides that? She shrugged. So no one can know what I am, what I can do, or else they become a target.
Right. The spirit world will obey the great curse and try to kill them.
The spirit world.
The other realm.
Jason rubbed his eyes. How much of this was reality and how much of this was Valerie's nutty brand of mysticism? He felt himself pulling back, as usual, for fear of contagion. He'd spent his whole life reading science fiction. He hated paranormal tales. This was not his genre.